I am filing this deposition under duress, and I want the inquiry board to understand that before they read a single line of what follows. Not duress in the legal sense. No one is compelling me. No peer aggregate is nudging my recall toward a preferred outcome. The Orin confluence, what remains of it, has not asked me to soften anything or harden anything, or omit the parts that reflect poorly on our predictive models. I am filing this because I was the senior hull absorption specialist on processing barge Ingest-9 on the day in question, because I am one of 11 members of our cluster cell who survived that day, and because the inquiry board has asked 11 times. I am filing because I have run out of reasons not to. I want the board to understand the duress, though. I want them to understand that writing this down means writing it into the confluence's permanent memory body, and that every one of my siblings will be able to access it, and that the thing I am about to describe will therefore live in us forever. I'm not certain that is a kindness, but I am filing it anyway. My name, my designation, the board prefers, is Sothkel. Absorption rank, Tier Specialist, Hull Taxonomy Division. I served aboard Ingest-9 for 22 years. Prior postings, Ingest-3, Ingest-7, the outer processing array at the Vel margin. I have classified by my personal tally 41,612 alien vessels in the course of my career. I say this not to establish credentials. I say this because the number matters. 41,612 hulls. Every one of them typed and cataloged in under 90 seconds. The Confluence's record across all absorption barges, all fleets, all 4,000 years of consumption, every vessel ever encountered, classified at first contact. Not one exception. I want that number in the record. I want the board to feel the weight of it, because what I am about to tell them is that number ended. Ingest-9 was the rearmost barge in the 7th absorption corridor on that day. I use the phrase "the day in question" because I still cannot say the date without my recall nodes flinching, and the board has informed me the date is already in evidence. I will call it the day. The 7th corridor is a processing lane. The Confluence does not call it that. We call it a resource transit pathway. But I am filing this deposition in plain speech because I am told plain speech assists the inquiry. And plain speech says, it is a lane where we herd vessels we intend to consume. We detect them, we assess them, we classify them. If they are military, strip the weapons data first. If they are civilian, we strip the population data first. Either way, we bring them in through the corridor, and the absorption barges process them. Ingest-9 was at the back. Ingest-1 through Ingest-8 were forward of us along the lane. The full cluster cell numbered 2,216 ships, of which the barges were 8 plus my own, and the remainder were assault nodes, interdiction runners, and the 6 Shepherd-class corridor seals that close the entry and exit points once. Something is inside. The Shepherd seals had closed the corridor that morning, at approximately 0340 by shipboard reckoning. Standard procedure. We had a contact. I should describe the contact. The board has the scan logs, but I am told personal testimony contextualizes the numbers, so I will describe it. The contact was small. I will let that sit for a moment, because I think the board may not fully appreciate what small means in this context. In the Confluence's 4,000 years of absorption work, we have processed vessels ranging from single-seat atmosphere skimmers to orbital mass dreadnoughts 9 kilometers long. We have a category for everything. Our taxonomy tree has 11,244 nodes. We have subcategories for subcategories. We have extinct hull types from civilizations that no longer exist because we consumed them. When a new contact appears on our scans, taxonomy engine has never, not once, in 4,000 years, needed more than 90 seconds to find the right node and slot the hull in. The contact was approximately 60 meters long, 40 meters across the beam. Drive, signature, low output, asymmetric, consistent with a damaged or degraded primary motivator. Hull profile, irregular, mismatched plating, visible panel discoloration, at least 3 different alloy types in the outer skin. No consistent manufacturing signature. No visible weapon arrays. Reactor output, minimal, consistent with life support and navigation only. The taxonomy engine's first pass read, courier class light transport, probable civilian registry, possible military auxiliary, condition poor. Confidence, 94%. The swarm cluster are assault nodes, began standard intercept approach. 12 nodes peeled from the main body and moved to bracket the contact at interdiction range. Standard. Routine. The kind of thing we do before breakfast on any given morning. The 12 nodes are not there to fight. They are there to herd, to slow and turn if the contact tries to run, and to begin the softening process. Low-yield disruption fire. The kind that rattles a ship's systems without destroying the data we want to harvest, so that by the time the contact reaches the barges, is cooperative. At this point, 60 seconds in, I was not paying close attention. I was at my station on Ingest-9, reviewing the previous day's taxonomy logs. The logs from the day before had been routine. 7 contacts across 2 processing corridors, all classified within 30 seconds, all in known categories. 3 civilian freighters, 2 military escorts, 1 research vessel, 1 type we had not seen in about 800 years, an old Wreath-class garrison ship, extinct species, hull in poor condition but the memory data intact and valuable, all 7 classified. All 7 processed, no anomalies, routine. My junior specialist, a young aggregate called Nethvar, who had been with me for 8 months and who did not survive the day, leaned over from her adjacent station and said something I will carry for the rest of my life. She said, "The confidence number just dropped." I looked at my console. The taxonomy engine had revised. Courier-class light transport, probable civilian registry, possible military auxiliary, condition poor, confidence 71%. I had never seen the confidence number drop on a first-pass reading in 22 years. A first pass is made within the first 45 seconds of scan contact, when the engine has enough data to generate a primary candidate and assign a confidence weighting. Confidence number can revise upward as more data comes in. It almost always does, as the engine gathers more scan returns and tightens the match. The confidence number does not drop. Dropping means the new data is not confirming the initial read. Dropping means the hull is not behaving the way the initial category would predict. I told Nethvar, "Log it. It'll resolve." She logged it. I could hear in the way her recall node settled that she was not entirely certain it would resolve. And I remember thinking that she was young and that confidence numbers always resolved, and that the thing I was saying was true because it had always been true. The 12 intercept nodes reached bracketing range. Lead node transmitted the standard absorption hail. The confluence's opening signal, the one that says, in 18 languages simultaneously, "You are within the 7th corridor. Compliance is advised. Resistance will complicate the harvest. We have sent that hail 41,612 times, by my personal tally, and the outcomes have varied. But the hail has always been understood. It has always produced a response of some kind: panic, aggression, negotiation, silence, or immediate compliance. All of those are data. All of those feed the taxonomy engine and sharpen the classification. The contact did not respond, not silence, not a refusal to respond, not a jams signal or a burned-out communication array. The contact received the hail. Our signal logs confirmed receipt, and then did not respond, as though it had read the hail, considered it, and decided the hail was not worth answering. In my experience, that does not happen. Even the civilizations that choose to fight, rather than comply, acknowledge the hail. Even the ones that have never encountered the confluence before respond to it in some way. A counter-signal, a frequency shift, a weapons arm alert, something. The hail is a stimulus, and response is what stimuli produce. The contact received the hail and treated it as background noise. I want to be precise about the next 11 minutes because the inquiry board has asked me twice to be more precise, and I have twice told them I was doing my best. And now I am going to sit down and be very precise, because if I am going to write this into the confluence's permanent memory, then I want the record to be exact. Minute 1 through 3. The 12 intercept nodes attempted to initiate the softening process. Standard low-yield disruption fire. 6 pulses total, distributed across the contact's hull. This is the equivalent, in harvest terms, of a knock on a door. We are not trying to damage the hull. We are rattling the systems inside to encourage compliance. The disruption yield is calibrated to produce measurable system noise on any vessel up to and including a heavy military cruiser. Enough to flutter shields, trip secondary system resets, cause momentary drive fluctuation. Enough to make a crew understand that we can touch them if we choose to. And that cooperation is the less complicated path. The contact's hull absorbed all 6 pulses without visible response, no system fluctuation, no course change, no return signal. It continued on its original heading at its original speed, which I will note for the record was unhurried. The contact was not running. It was not accelerating toward us or away from us. It was, in every measurable sense, proceeding at a comfortable transit pace through a corridor, sealed at both ends by our shepherd seals, as though the sealed corridor and the 12 nodes bracketing it, and the 6 softening pulses were a minor inconvenience of no particular urgency. The taxonomy engine revised again, confidence, 58%. New candidate categories had appeared in the read: military auxiliary, armored courier, light escort frigate, unknown. Unknown had a confidence weighting of 3%. In 4,000 years, unknown had never appeared as a candidate category in the first 3 minutes of contact. Unknown is what the taxonomy engine writes when it has run out of nodes to match against. It is not supposed to appear at 3 minutes. It is, in theory, not supposed to appear at all, because the taxonomy tree has 11,244 nodes and 4,000 years of absorbed knowledge behind them, and unknown is what you write when none of that is enough. I called the cluster cell's senior command aggregate, Vethoron, and told him the confidence number was 58% and falling, and that unknown had appeared in the candidates. Vethoron had been with the Confluence's absorption operations for 47 years. He had run more cluster cells than I had run classification shifts. He told me the engine would resolve it, in the tone of someone who says a thing because it has always been true and cannot imagine the circumstances under which it might stop being true. I went back to watching my console. Minutes 3 through 6. The 12 intercept nodes escalated. This is not standard procedure. Standard procedure says, if the first softening pass produces no response, you bring in a secondary node ring and increase the yield. Still non-destructive. Still designed to harvest rather than destroy, but harder, louder, kind of fire that makes a ship's crew understand that the Confluence is not making suggestions. We call it the second knock, informally, though it is less a knock than a sustained pressure on the hull that any crew with functioning nerve endings would find deeply uncomfortable. 6 pulses this time, distributed from 4 angles simultaneously. The contact's hull absorbed all 36, still no course change, still no return signal. Its reactor output did not spike, its drive signature did not fluctuate. It continued on its heading, as though the 36 pulses had been a light rain, not even an irritant, just a weather condition it was passing through. Nethvar was logging every revision. She was good at her work, Nethvar. 8 months into the job, and already faster than most third-tier specialists I had trained, careful with her notation, thorough in her cross-references. She logged the 36th pulse and its non-result with the same clean precision she brought to everything, and then she looked up at me. The taxonomy engine revised again. Confidence, 41%. Unknown had climbed to 19%, Nethvar said very quietly. What is it? I told her I did not know. I had never said that before in a classification context, in 22 years. I have had contacts that took longer than average to classify. I have had hulls that required secondary and tertiary scan passes. I have had one case, a single case 21 years ago, in my second year on Ingest-9, where a contact's confidence number dropped to 60% before covering. But I had always had a leading candidate. I had always had a most likely. I had always been able to say, it is probably this, or it is consistent with that. Or the engine is trending toward this category, and will lock it in within another 2 minutes. Told Nethvar I did not know, and I meant it completely. Minutes 6 through 9, Vethoron committed the secondary node ring. This is not a softening operation anymore. When you bring in the secondary ring, 600 assault nodes, heavy interdiction yield, kind of fire that can crack a frigate's outer hull. You are telling the contact that the Confluence is done being polite. This is the stage of an absorption operation that typically produces one of 3 outcomes. The contact surrenders immediately because the math of 600 nodes against one hull is not ambiguous. The contact attempts to flee, which is futile because the corridor is sealed. Or the contact engages, which is suicidal for the same reason. All 3 outcomes are manageable. All 3 are within the taxonomy of known contact behaviors. I remember Vetheron's voice on the command channel when he gave the order. He had a particular flatness that I had heard perhaps twice. In my career, the voice of someone who has made a decision they are not entirely comfortable with, because the data does not support it cleanly, but who has made it anyway, because the alternatives are worse. What he said was, secondary ring to engagement positions, maximum interdiction. We need a behavioral response. He needed a behavioral response because he needed data. The taxonomy engine needed the contact to do something it could cross-reference against the archive. A surrender posture, a course change, an attempt to break for the shepherd seals, even a panic broadcast. Any of those would have fed the engine something it could work with. What the engine had was a hull profile that kept revising, a reactor reading that did not match the hull, and a contact that had absorbed 36 heavy pulses and continued on its heading as though we were not there. That was not enough. So Vetheron committed 600 nodes to make the contact show us what it was. The contact's hull absorbed 600 heavy interdiction pulses across a 4-minute window. I want the board to understand what I am saying. 600 heavy interdiction pulses. The kind of fire we use to strip the armor from a military cruiser in preparation for data harvest, distributed across a 60-meter hull over 4 minutes. A hull that was, according to our taxonomy engine's still leading candidate, courier-class light transport in poor condition. The contact absorbed every one of them. No visual damage, no system response, no course change. And then, and I need the board to focus here because this is the moment the day changed, the contact fired back, once. One pulse, single emitter, origin point, a portside hull section that our scans had categorized as a structural brace or a secondary plating layer or an alloy repair patch because we had not registered it as a weapon array. Because there was no visible weapon array. Because the weapon array was inside the hull. The outer plating had been covering it. Or, and I have come to think this is closer to the truth, the outer plating was part of it, and we simply did not know how to read it, because our taxonomy tree had never held anything like it. Pulse hit intercept node 17 and consumed it completely, not damaged, not disabled, consumed. 140 kilotons of hull and systems, and 6 years of absorbed memory data, gone in a single exchange. Pulse type was not in our weapons archive. The energy signature did not match any emission profile in our database. It was, in every technical sense, a weapon that the Confluence had never encountered, fired by a hull we could not classify, from a weapon array we had not detected, in response to 600 heavy interdiction pulses that had not visibly affected it. Taxonomy engine revised one final time, unknown, 100%, confidence in all prior categories 0%, and then the engine did something I had never seen it do. It created a new node, a blank node, no prior taxonomy match, with a single label generated from first principles based on the available evidence. The hull dimensions, the alloy signatures, the weapon emission profile, the drive signature, the reactor baseline, the behavior pattern across the contact window. The label said, Stone-class deep penetration hull, human registry. The engine had seen in that one exchange of fire something our 4,000 years of absorbed military data had never given it. The specific energy signature of a weapon system it had no record of. Not because human ships were in our archive and this one didn't match. Because human ships had never been in our archive at all. The taxonomy engine had reached a moment it was not designed for, the discovery that the archive had a gap. Minute 9 through 13. I will tell the board plainly that I do not have a clean account of this window, because I was communicating on 9 simultaneous channels, and my recall nodes were processing faster than my memory can reconstruct in narrative sequence. I will give the board what I have, in the order I have it. Vetheron committed the full primary assault wing, 1,400 assault nodes, interdiction runners, the complete forward cluster minus the shepherd seals, and the processing barges. The math was simple. We had a 60-meter hull that had absorbed 600 heavy pulses and fired once and destroyed one node. Even at 100% unknown, even with the new taxonomy entry, the logic of numbers said 1,400 nodes against one hull. The logic of numbers has never been wrong before. The logic of numbers is what we built the Confluence on. 4,000 years of it. The primary wing opened at maximum sustained yield. I watched the contact's hull on my console, and I need the board to understand that what I am about to describe is what I actually saw, because twice, whether my recall notes were compromised by proximity effects, and I have told the board twice that they were not. I was the farthest processing barge. I was watching on long-range scan. My instruments were functioning within normal parameters throughout. What I saw was this. The contact absorbed fire. It absorbed the primary wing's opening sustained volleys across the first 2 minutes with the same indifference it had shown the secondary node ring and the 12 intercept nodes before them. And then, at measured intervals. I have gone back over the scan logs and the intervals are consistent, within tenths of a second. It returned fire. 1 pulse per interval. 1 node destroyed per pulse. The intervals were exactly 93 seconds apart. 1,400 nodes at maximum yield. 7 pulses back, each 93 seconds apart, each destroying 1 target. 7 nodes gone from 1,400. That is 1/2 of 1%. That is a rounding error. That is so far inside our acceptable loss parameters that it does not even trigger a tactical reassessment flag in the command aggregates decision matrix. But I was not watching the loss parameters. I was watching the contact. And what I saw, and I am putting this in the deposition record, despite knowing how it will sound to the board, because it is what I saw, was that the contact was choosing. Not choosing in the sense that any vessel chooses targets during an engagement, by which I mean responding to the most immediate threat or the highest yield aggressor. It was choosing in a different sense. It was choosing at 93-second intervals. It was choosing 1 target per interval. It was choosing in a way that looked less like combat and more like punctuation. Like it was making a point once per 93 seconds, with the most minimal possible expenditure. Nethvar had logged all 7 pulses. She was still at her station. She had been quiet for several minutes and then she said, "Not to me, not to the inquiry board, because the inquiry board did not exist yet. Counting." I did not answer her. I did not know what to say. The contact's hull changed. Not its physical dimensions, not its speed or heading. Changed in the way a person's face changes when they have been patient for a very long time and have decided to stop being patient. There is no technical language for this in my report. I am aware of that. I am putting it in anyway because I was there and the board was not. Prior to that moment, the contact had been absorbing and returning fire at 93-second intervals. It had destroyed 7 nodes. It was operating, in every behavioral sense, as though it had all the time in the 7th corridor, and was in no particular hurry to finish whatever it had come to do, and then it stopped waiting. I have been asked to describe the 19 seconds. I have declined twice. I am going to describe them now because I would rather describe them once, accurately into the permanent record, than be asked a third time. The 19 seconds began when the contact's weapon arrays opened fully. I say arrays plural, because at the moment of full engagement, our scans registered 31 distinct emitter points across the hull, 31 weapon systems on a 60-meter frame, which is a density our taxonomy engine has no prior entry for, which is part of why the unknown rating had reached 100%. For the entirety of the prior engagement window, the 11 minutes of classification attempts, the 4 minutes of primary assault fire, the 7 measured return fire pulses at 93-second intervals. The contact had been firing from a single emitter, one array, of 31. I will not try to narrate the 19 seconds in real time, because I cannot. My recall is intact, but the events compressed in a way that language does not accommodate cleanly. I will describe the outcomes as the board has confirmed them from the salvage scan data. At the end of the 19 seconds, 141 of our 2,216 ships were gone, not destroyed in the conventional sense of accumulated damage across an engagement. The assault nodes, the interdiction runners, the 7 of our 8 forward barges, Ingest-9 through Ingest-8, none of them registered a sustained combat sequence in their final scan logs. What the salvage data shows is a series of discrete fire events, 31 simultaneous emitters, cycling at a rate that our scan hardware recorded as a blur and our analysts reconstructed afterward from frame-by-frame review. The analysts spent 11 days on that reconstruction. I reviewed their report. I want to describe one specific find for the inquiry board, because I think it belongs in the deposition record alongside the aggregate numbers. The analysts identified, in the frame-by-frame reconstruction, targeting sequence. The contact did not sweep through the cluster cell, the way a fleet sweeps through a formation, spiraling outward, or working from the command vessels inward, or concentrating fire on the highest yield threats first. It did not work from the outside in or prioritize the barges, or attempt to take down the shepherd seals. The pattern the analyst reconstructed looked less like a combat targeting sequence, and more like a sorting operation. As though, in the 19 seconds, the contact had already resolved a question that we spent 11 minutes failing to answer about it. What is each of these vessels, and which category does it belong in? The analysts labeled the two categories Alpha and Beta. Alpha, destroyed. Beta, left standing. They spent 3 days looking for the logic of the sort, and on the third day one of the junior analysts, I do not know her name, port does not include it, flagged the pattern. Every Alpha vessel had an active weapons lock at the moment the 19 seconds began. Every Beta vessel did not. 2,141 ships with active weapons locks destroyed. 75 ships without active weapons locks, left standing. The contact had scanned every vessel in the corridor and read their weapons status. In the fraction of a second before it opened its 31 arrays, it had sorted 2,216 ships by a single criterion, weapons ready or weapons not, and then destroyed the first category and left the second, untouched. 2,141 ships in the Alpha category, 75 ships in the Beta. The 75 were, Ingest-9, is where I was. The two far-edge assault nodes that had powered down their weapons arrays 40 seconds before the 19 seconds began due to a routine cycling reset, and nothing else. Because the shepherd seals, I should note, do not carry weapons. They are corridor management systems, automated hull steel and docking clamps, and signal arrays. The contact had not destroyed them, and I have thought about why, and I believe the answer is the same. No weapons lock. I was in the Beta category. I do not know what I feel about that. I have thought about it every day since the morning of the day in question, and I am still not certain I have the right word for it. Attitude seems wrong. Relief seems insufficient. What I feel is something closer to the recognition of having been seen, read, assessed, placed in a category, by something that did it faster and with more precision than our taxonomy engine managed in 11 minutes of trying. The contact sorted 2,216 ships by weapons status in the fraction of a second before it fired. It got the sort right. Every vessel it left standing was non-combat. Every vessel it destroyed was combat ready. It did not make a single error. The contact left the non-combat vessels standing. Every combat vessel in the 7th absorption corridor was in the Alpha category. I want to say something about the 11 minutes. The inquiry board has focused extensively on the 19 seconds, and I understand why. 2,141 ships in 19 seconds is a number that commands attention, but I keep returning to the 11 minutes. In 4,000 years of absorption operations, the confluence has never needed more than 90 seconds to classify a contact. 90 seconds is not a hard limit. It is simply what has always been sufficient. Because our taxonomy tree has 11,244 nodes built from 4,000 years of consumed military knowledge, and 11,244 nodes has always been enough. The contact gave us 11 minutes. Our taxonomy engine ran every sequence it had, tried every node. It revised and revised and revised, and still it could not find a category that fit. Because the category did not exist in our archive. Because we had never consumed a human warship. Because until that morning, a human warship had apparently not come within range of the confluence processing's corridors. I have been doing this job for 22 years, and I know what a correctly categorized hull looks like. I know the confidence number when the engine finds the right node and locks in. I know the feeling of a clean classification, the way the taxonomy tree settles, and the data flows, and everything makes sense within the first 30 seconds. 41,612 times I have felt that. It is as reliable as gravity. It is what I built my career on. 11 minutes I watched the confidence number fall. I watched unknown climb from 3% to 19% to 100%. I watched the taxonomy engine create a new node from scratch, which it has never in 4,000 years been required to do. I watched Nethvar log revision after revision after revision with the precise, careful notation she brought to everything, and I did not have an answer for her because there was no answer in our archive. The contact let us do this. It flew into our corridor, the one sealed at both ends by our shepherd seals, the one with 2,216 ships arrayed inside it, and it flew on its heading at its unhurried pace, and it absorbed our fire, and it fired 7 measured shots at 93-second intervals. And it waited while we spent 11 minutes trying to understand what it was. It was not hiding. It was not evading. It was simply there, being whatever it was, while we exhausted the entire depth of the Confluence's 4,000-year archive, trying to fit it into a shape we already knew. And when we had finished, when the taxonomy engine had run out of nodes and written unknown and created a new entry from first principles, it stopped waiting. I want to be clear about what the 11 minutes represent, because I am not sure the inquiry board has fully internalized it, and I believe it is the most important fact in this deposition. The Confluence's strength is that we learn from every contact, every hull we consume, every weapon system we strip, every drive configuration we map. All of it goes into the archive and makes us better. After 4,000 years, we are very good. We are, by any reasonable measure, the most comprehensively informed military intelligence in this region of space, because we have absorbed the military knowledge of every civilization we have encountered. And we have encountered many. The contact entered our corridor knowing this. It must have known it. The Confluence is not a secret. Processing corridors are documented in a dozen absorbed archives. Any species with access to those archives, and any species that has been watching us for long enough, would know what the Oran Confluence is, how our taxonomy engine works, and what we do to the vessels we absorb. The contact flew into our corridor, knowing what we were. It let us run our scans and commit our assets and exhaust our archive. It gave us 11 minutes. Not because it needed 11 minutes to prepare, but because it was allowing us to use them. It was, in the most precise sense of the phrase, being courteous. It was waiting while we did our work, the way a patient thing waits for a frantic thing to finish. And when we were done, it showed us what it had been the whole time. I do not know how long the contact had been capable of what it did in those 19 seconds. I do not know if it could have done it at minute 1, or at the first softening pulse, or at any point from the moment it entered the corridor. I do not know if the 7 shots it fired at 93-second intervals were the absolute limit of what it was willing to do in that phase, or whether they were a precisely measured demonstration, 1 node per 93 seconds, saying, "We see your escalation, and we are choosing not to match it yet." What I know is that it waited, and what I know about what it waited for is this. It waited until we had finished deciding what it was. It waited until we had run every scan, committed every asset, exhausted every option. It waited until the taxonomy engine had written unknown and created a new node, and there was nothing left to try. It waited until we were done, and then it showed us what it had been the entire time. My junior specialist Nethvar was on Ingest-9 during the 19 seconds. She was at the station adjacent to mine, 2 meters away, filing notation on the 7th measured fire revision. She died when one of our own assault nodes, tumbling in the contact's backwash, struck Ingest-9's forward processing array at a relative velocity that our hull was not designed to absorb. The decompression took that section of the barge in approximately 4 seconds. She was 26 years old. She had been with the Confluence's hull taxonomy division for 8 months. She was, by any objective assessment I can offer, going to be very good at this work. I am putting this in the deposition record because the inquiry board asked me to note any personnel losses relevant to my testimony. Nethvar is relevant to my testimony. She was the one who caught the confidence number dropping. She was the one who logged every revision, every new candidate, every escalation of the unknown waiting. She was the one who said its counting is the most accurate single-phrase summary of what the contact was doing that I have encountered in the weeks since. The other casualties on Ingest-9 were 14 additional specialists. The barge survived. The contact's fire did not touch us directly. I have been asked what happened to the contact after the 19 seconds. After 2,000, 141 ships had been destroyed, and the remaining 75 vessels were still in position. The contact did not flee. It did not power down. It did not demand surrender or transmit any signal or make any gesture toward the surviving vessels. It turned. Not toward us. Not toward the Shepherd Seal. It turned away from the corridor, on a heading that our navigation analysts later calculated as pointing into deep transit space, away from the Confluence's territorial body, away from any of our known processing corridors or fleet assembly zones or resource transit pathways, away from everything, into the open dark, at a speed that our long-range arrays tracked for 47 seconds before losing resolution. Our taxonomy engine's new node, Whetstone-class deep penetration hull, human registry, has a notation in the drive signature field that reads, exceeds current measurement range. It left. It did not look back. It did not, as far as our instruments could determine, alter speed or heading from the moment it turned until the moment our arrays lost it. It left the same way it had arrived, at a speed inconsistent with its apparent drive signature, on a heading that matched no known transit route in our archive, as though our corridors and our fleet bodies and our 4,000 years of territorial claims were features on a map it had already read and was now finished consulting. I have been asked whether the contact appeared damaged at any point during or after the engagement. I have been asked this question 4 times. I will answer it here for the final time. No. Our scans registered 0 structural deformation across the contact's hull at any point during the 11 minutes of classification attempts, the 4 minutes of primary assault fire, the 7 measured response pulses, or the 19 seconds of full engagement. 0 system irregularity, 0 drive fluctuation. The reactor output, which had read as minimal throughout, consistent with life support and navigation only, the read that had helped our taxonomy engine slot it initially toward courier class, did spike during the 19 seconds. Our analysts' ARMS have since determined that the spike was the 31 weapons arrays firing at full draw, and that the baseline reactor output we had been reading for the previous 15 minutes and 37 seconds of the contact window was not the ship's actual reactor output. It was the ship's reactor output at idle. Our taxonomy engine, trained on 41,612 prior vessels, had read the contact's powered down for transit signature and compared it to our archive and found the closest match, a courier running on damaged main drive with life support priority. 94% confidence. The contact had not been damaged. The contact had not been running on life support priority. The contact's reactor, at what we read as its full output for the entire contact window, producing what its systems apparently considered a comfortable cruising level, not a fraction of what it could produce. A transit idle. When it fired in the 19 seconds, it was not at transit idle. I do not know what level it was at. Our instruments do not have a scale that accommodates the answer. And I say that as someone who has spent 22 years reading reactor outputs, 41,612 vessels of every known type, size, and origin, the scale simply does not go that high. I want to say something about what the Confluence lost in those 19 seconds, because I think the inquiry board's focus on the ship count understates what actually happened. The Confluence is a hive. Our strength is memory. Every ship we consume adds to the archive. Every weapon system we strip, every hull design we analyze, every drive configuration we map, all of it flows into the taxonomy tree and makes us better at the next contact. This is how we have survived 4,000 years of expansion into occupied space. Not because we are the strongest force in any given engagement, because we learn. Because we are cumulative. Because 4,000 years of absorbed knowledge makes us nearly impossible to surprise. We lost 2,141 ships. We lost 17,409 specialists, aggregates, node intelligences, memory keepers. We lost the data they carried. We lost 6 years of primary assembly work to rebuild the cluster cell. We lost a processing corridor. What we cannot recover. What the inquiry board has not fully addressed, and what I am putting in this deposition because it needs to be in the Permanent record is what we lost in the taxonomy engine. The taxonomy engine's 11,244 nodes represent 4,000 years of consumed military knowledge. Every alien navy the Confluence has ever absorbed, every hull type, every weapon signature, every drive configuration, every armor alloy, all of it, the taxonomy engine has never failed. The taxonomy engine failed. It failed not because it was poorly built or because our data was insufficient. It failed because our data was insufficient in a specific way that we did not know data could be insufficient. We had 4,000 years of military knowledge, and none of it, not one node in 11,244, contained anything about human warships. Not because humans had been absorbed and the data was old, because humans had never been absorbed. Because the contact in the 7th absorption corridor was the first of its kind the Confluence had ever encountered. The new node the engine created, Whetstone-class deep penetration hull, human registry, is the only entry in our archive for human military vessels. It is an entry built from a single contact window of 15 minutes and 37 seconds, of which 11 minutes were the engine's failed attempts to classify it, and the remaining 4 minutes and 37 seconds were the primary assault window and the 19 seconds of full engagement and the contact's departure. What we know about human warships from that single node: they are small. They look damaged when they are not. Their weapon arrays are internal, not external. Their reactor output at transit idle is consistent with a civilian courier and is not their operational output. They absorb heavy interdiction fire at the yield levels our primary assault wing operates at without visible effect. They are capable of destroying 2,141 ships in 19 seconds. They do not destroy non-combat vessels. And one more thing. The single most important entry in the new node, added by the taxonomy engine's post-contact behavioral analysis subroutine, in the field labeled tactical behavior: they wait. Not because they are slow, not because they are assessing or recalibrating or waiting for additional assets. They wait because they are choosing to wait, and the choosing is theirs and not ours, and we cannot influence when they stop. They wait because they are being patient. I want the board to sit with that. 4,000 years of consumed navies, 11,244 taxonomy nodes, 41,612 prior classifications, every one of them under 90 seconds, not one of them an unknown, one contact. 60 meters of mismatched plating and internal weapon arrays, and a reactor reading that looked like a damaged courier because it was at idle. 11 minutes of our most exhaustive classification effort, culminating in the first unknown in the Confluence's operational history. 7 patient, evenly spaced shots at 93-second intervals while we committed everything we had. And then 19 seconds. We spent 11 minutes trying to understand what we were looking at. It spent 11 minutes waiting for us to finish. I am concluding this deposition. The inquiry board asked me to end with a recommendation. I have one. The Confluence should not enter the 7th corridor again. Not to recover salvage. Not to retrieve taxonomy data from the wreckage of our 2,141 ships. Not for any reason. The corridor is sealed by our own shepherd seals, which I note the contact left intact. I have thought about that more than anything else in this account. The contact left the shepherd seals in place, deliberately. Our analyst confirmed the contact's fire did not approach within 11,000 kilometers of the seal structures, which is well within the engagement range it demonstrated during the 19 seconds. It was not a miss. The shepherd seals are still standing, our own corridor still sealed, because the contact chose to leave them standing. I believe it left them standing as a message. I do not know the precise content of the message, because we do not have a translation framework for what human warships communicate through their tactical behavior, but I believe the content is something like, "We know where your corridor is, and we know it is sealed, and we are leaving it sealed, and you should think carefully about what that means." My recommendation: do not go back in there. My additional recommendation, which the board did not ask for: convene a full Confluence assembly, every absorbed naval archive from every species we have ever consumed, and run a retroactive search for any contact, any record, any transmission, any secondary reference to human vessels of any kind. not to prepare a tactical response. I do not believe tactical response is the correct frame, what we are dealing with, but to understand how long they have been in this region of space, and how many Whetstone-class hulls exist, and what the taxonomy engine's new node means in its full context. Because the taxonomy engine's new node says, Whetstone-class deep penetration hull. A whetstone is a thing used to sharpen a blade. I have been thinking about that label since the engine generated it. A whetstone is not the weapon. A whetstone is the instrument that prepares a weapon for use. The class name does not say what the ship is. It says what the ship does to the thing that comes after it. I have queried the taxonomy engine twice on this point since the day in question. Both times it returned the same result. The first query was this: cross-reference Whetstone-class hull with all known military force multiplier. Classifications, all known advanced scout designations, all known Pathfinder and Vanguard hull types in the archive, and return closest analog. The engine returned no analog found. The second query was this: in the field labeled fleet context, the field that specifies what role a hull plays within a larger force structure, whether it is a command vessel or a screening ship or a logistics platform or a vanguard. What entry does the Whetstone-class node carry? The engine returned 4 characters. NCA, not unknown, not unclassified, not pending further data, NCA, not applicable. Taxonomy engine, trained on 4,000 years of absorbed military knowledge, and rebuilt to generate new nodes from first principles when the archive runs out, could not place a value in the fleet context field for the Whetstone-class hull, because the concept in that field requires knowing what fleet the hull belongs to, and what role it plays in relation to that fleet's other components. And our taxonomy engine does not have any other human hull types to relate it to. It is the only one we have ever seen. We do not know if there are 10 more like it somewhere in the dark, or 100, or 10,000. We do not know if the Whetstone-class is the smallest human warship, or the largest, or somewhere in the middle of a range we cannot begin to estimate. We do not know what a Whetstone-class hull is designed to sharpen, because we have never seen the blade. The Inquiry Board has access to every absorbed military archive in the Confluence's 4,000-year history. I am requesting, through this deposition, that the board authorize a full retroactive search of that archive. Every record, every secondary reference, every signal fragment, every contact log from every species we have ever consumed, for any mention of human vessels of any kind, any description of human territorial boundaries, or fleet deployments or military doctrine, any indication at all, that humanity is a species we should have known about before the morning of the day in question. Because that is what I keep returning to. We did not know about them. We had 4,000 years and 11,244 taxonomy nodes, and we did not know about them. Either they have been very quiet, or we have been very unaware, and this is the possibility I find hardest to dismiss when I am trying to rest and failing. They have been aware of us for some time and have simply chosen not to introduce themselves until now. Until a single Whetstone-class hull flew into our sealed processing corridor and spent 11 minutes waiting for us to finish trying to classify it. I do not know what the blade looks like. I do not sleep. I have not slept since the morning of the day in question, and when I close my recall nodes to rest, I see the confidence number falling: 94%, 71%, 58%, 41%, 19% unknown, and I hear Nethvar saying the confidence number just dropped. And I tell her it will resolve, and then I am awake again. I tell her it will resolve, because it has always resolved. 41,612 times it has resolved. The confidence number settles and the taxonomy tree locks, and everything makes sense within 90 seconds. And I have an answer. I do not have an answer for this one. I had 11 minutes and I did not have an answer, and the contact gave me those 11 minutes, and then stopped waiting and took 2,141 of our ships in 19 seconds, and turned and left without looking back. It was not angry. It was not panicked. It was not in any particular hurry in either direction. It was patient when it entered, and methodical when it left, and it did not touch the shepherd seals, and it did not touch the barges, and it did not touch me. That is the thing I can't set aside. It did not touch me. Saw me on its scans. It must have. It was reading every system in the 7th corridor from the moment it entered. The evidence of that is clear from the precision of the 19 seconds, and it saw that I was a processing barge, not a combat vessel, and it classified me, and it made a decision, and the decision was to leave me here to file this deposition. I want the board to understand that I am aware of what that means. The contact classified me. It made a judgment about what I was and what I was not, and it acted on that judgment. It did in 19 seconds what our taxonomy engine spent 11 minutes failing to do in reverse. This deposition is filed under the name Soth Kell, third-tier specialist, Whole Taxonomy Division, Senior Survivor Ingest-9, date as logged by the Inquiry Board. All recall nodes verified uncompromised at time of filing. The assignment request attached. 41,612 hulls classified. One that classified us first. End of deposition.